Well, I didn't have to wait long. This is the Insta360 Go 2 and they fixed almost everything. The Go 2 is similar in form factor to the original Go with a few key differences. If you haven't seen my review of the original Insta360 Go, I will link it up here and down here. The overall size of the camera has increased, but not by much. And you really would have to have them side by side to notice. Sadly, I can't do that, and if you have watched that review, you will know why I sent it back. The Go 2 now has a matte finish which makes it far less slippery when you hold it, and it also comes with removable lens covers. This means they're not only replaceable, but you can get ND filters. The Go 2 still has magnets around the back which allow it to attach to the mounts and pretty much any magnetic surface. And although I have no specific information to confirm it, I'm pretty sure the magnets in the Go 2 are just that little bit stronger than they were in the original. The much complained about button on the first Go has now been changed. It's been moved from round the back to round the front. It's not a traditional button still and takes up about half of the bottom of the camera, but it's very easy to press, far easier than the original one. You might say it's a little bit too easy. You do have to be careful when handling the camera to make sure that you don't either start or stop the recording unintended. So that covers all the physical changes to the camera, but what about the charging case? The charging case has had a significant overhaul from the last version. It too now features a matte texture just like the camera, and gone is the detachable see-through lid. The other thing missing from the new case is the lightning connector on the bottom, which means there's no longer a need for the rubber bumper either. Connection to your phone, either iOS or Android, is now handled via Wi-Fi, so no physical connection is needed. More on that later. Elsewhere on the outside of the case there is now USB-C charging, and right next to that there is a rather handy 1/4-20 tripod mount, the use of which will become clear in a second. Below that there are two small fold-out legs which act as a tripod so the case can stand up. And there's also an LED indicator for charging. So far so good. But it's when you open it up that you really see the full extent of the changes made to the case. The case now features a remote with screen, allowing you to see and control most of the settings on the camera directly from the case, meaning that you no longer need to rely on the app. It also means you no longer have to remember a long list of button sequences in order to make sure you're shooting in the right mode. Now these button sequences are still available if you do take the camera out without the case, but again, you're not going to have to rely on them. You can now use the camera either as before, just returning it to the case to charge it, which by the way, you can only put the camera in the case one way now, rather than both ways and not charge it in the old model. Or now you can shoot with the camera whilst it's in the case. The advantage of this is that you get to use the full extent of the battery whilst recording. This is the reason for the 1/4-20 mount on the bottom of the case. It means that you can put the whole thing on a tripod and shoot with the camera in the case, getting the full use of the battery on a tripod. There's even a pass-through hole on the outside of the case for the mic. The remote works whether the camera is in the case or not, and it has a range of up to 10 meters. This means that if you're going to mount the Go 2 somewhere really tricky, you can still trigger the recording using the case. The Insta360 Go now uses the same app as all of Insta360's other cameras, rather than having an app dedicated to the Go. Aside from changing settings and downloading clips, the best thing about the app this time round is you actually get a live preview from the camera. This is both before and during recording unless you're shooting HDR. One small quirk when you're using the app is that the physical buttons on the remote no longer work and you have to start and stop recording using the software button in the app. It's not the end of the world, and I guess it's something they could update, but just so you know, once you're in the app, it's the app that you use. This gives you all the flexibility of reframing the footage after the fact, as well as Insta360's flow state stabilisation. This time round you can record for either 5, 10, 15 or 30 minutes. Now the 30-minute mode is designed for FPV drones, so if you are just walking around using this mode, the likelihood is it will overheat and shut down. This is a significant improvement over the original Go, where the max recording time was just 60 seconds in the regular mode, and then there was an FPV mode which I think was 5 minutes. Resolution this time maxes out at 1440p, which is also an improvement over the previous Go where that maxed out at 1080p. There is still a 1080p mode if you wish. Where you will really notice the difference between the Go 2 and the original Go is in the quality of the footage. The Go 2 now shoots up to 80 megabits per second, whereas the original Go was something significantly less. I'm not sure what it was off the top of my head, but I think reportedly it was around 20, so there is a significant difference. There are 4 choices when it comes to the field of view for the camera, and there are 2 frame rate options. Sadly, neither of these are 24 frames per second in this mode. They are 30 frames per second and 50 frames per second. You can also choose the aspect ratio as well as 3 different color profiles, one of which is log. This is designed for quick clips where you don't intend to do any post-processing. So there's no reframing options here, and there's only basic stabilisation. Which means when you spin it around, you will end up with footage that is upside down, unlike the flow state stabilisation, which keeps the horizon locked regardless of how you spin the camera. All the other options that are available in the Pro mode are available in the standard mode. If you do want to shoot in 24 frames per second, then HDR mode is the one you want to go for. You can also shoot 25 frames per second in HDR, but that's it, just the 2 frame rates. It also appears to have some sort of flow state stabilization, but this is with some added motion blur, and I'm not entirely sure what the difference is between the two, and it doesn't say so on Insta360's website. But in my testing, you could see that it wasn't quite as smooth as that in the Pro mode. The color profiles are also absent in HDR mode, but then it's HDR, so they would be. All the other options remain. You can choose intervals between half a second and 2 minutes, up to a maximum recording time of 110 minutes. This will leave you with a final video length of 7 minutes. For maximum recording time, you will need to have the camera in the case. Obviously, it's going to give it that extra battery life. This is basically a hyperlapse, and there are no settings as such. It just records until the battery runs out or you stop the recording. The final clip length is then generated automatically. Here you can shoot 120 frames per second from a minimum length of 15 seconds. This is a nod to the original camera, all the way up to that same 30-minute time limit as in the other modes. So you can see the previous frustrations of recording limits on the previous Go have mostly been solved with the Go 2. The Go 2 not only shoots video, it shoots stills, and it does so with 4 different modes: standard, interval, star lapse and night shot. It even shoots in RAW. The Go 2 now has 32 gigabytes of internal storage. 28 gigabytes of that you can actually use. And if you're lucky like me, you'll have an included clip of the inside of the case that was shot in the factory before it shipped to you. Downloading the footage is either done over Wi-Fi by connecting it to the app, or for the first time by plugging a cable directly into your computer. Imagine that. You can then take this footage and process it in the desktop app or drop it directly into your editing program of choice. Keep in mind, some of those video files will be spherical and you will need to do some post-processing to get the flow state stabilization and the reframing, etc. The flow state stabilization is just insane. but as far as I can tell, there's not any difference between the original Go and the Go 2. That said, this isn't an area that the original Go really needed much improvement. The fact that you can spin this thing 360 degrees and it will hold the horizon all the way around is incredible. Compare this to the GoPro Hero 9 and you get a total of 30 degrees either way before it loses the horizon lock. Unless of course you're going to pick up a max lens mod to get the same effect, but then it's going to cost you another 90 quid. All the same reframing options are here as they were in the first one, as long as you're shooting in the Pro video mode. This means you can use the same footage for your Instagram stories as you can for your YouTube channel. Just export in 16:9 and 9:16, and you can even do 1:1 if you want to stick it on your main feed. With the camera in the case fully charged, you will get to shoot for 2.5 hours. And with the camera on its own, you get half an hour. The camera takes 35 minutes to fully recharge and the case takes 65 minutes. The Go 2 is fully waterproof this time round, down to 4 meters or 13 feet. This is the camera only, the case is not waterproof. If you put the case in water, it's going to stop working. The Go 2 also has something called Aqua Vision, which you can turn on, which is supposed to make the shot clearer and the colours more vivid. The price of the Go 2 has increased compared to the previous generation, and it's now much closer to the current GoPro. But when you consider the size and weight of the Go 2 and the fact that it comes with a remote, I personally think it's much better value. In the box, the standard kit comes with the magnetic pendant, an articulating hat clip, and the pivot stand. Not much has changed with the pendant, it works in the same way as it did before. This time round, the hat clip has ditched the rubber wedge, which to be honest I found a bit too fiddly and kinda useless. And this time the part holding the camera can rotate, which is much better. Finally, the pivot stand. This is a kind of combination of a few of the accessories that came in the original Go. Rather than having a removable base with a sticky mount, this time it's actually attached. And then you get this removable cover which allows you to keep the sticky base clean and also acts as a handle. It also comes with a lanyard attached, so if you're going to use it underwater for instance, it's going to be far less likely that you're going to lose it. The Go 2 is an upgrade over the original Go in almost every way, and that makes it a real GoPro competitor. You may think it's a bit silly to compare the Go 2 to the current GoPro Hero 9 with its 5K resolution, swappable batteries and removable SD card, but I'm telling you, this thing is far easier to mount, it's significantly smaller, and it's a far more stable user experience than the GoPro. I could go on about the issues I experienced with the GoPro Hero 9 at length, but don't worry, I'm not going to. Just suffice it to say that I found it very, very frustrating to use and I've returned it. The Insta360 Go 2 is now my action camera of choice. The tiny form factor of the original Go was enough to catch my attention, but ultimately it was lacking in some areas. In the Go 2, Insta360 have managed to keep everything that was exciting and good about the original Go, but fix almost everything I didn't like. And then just when they could have called it a day, they thought, let's chuck in a remote. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.